Lakeland Public Television's Common Ground is brought to you by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
Hi, my name is Ken Klose. I have a small photo studio in Staples, and I guess the reason we're here today is just to talk a little bit about what I'm doing personally with my photography. I first started with a serious interest in photography when I was in Vietnam. I served in Vietnam as an interrogator with the 101st Airborne Division from June of 1970 to April of 71. And that's where I bought what I would consider my first real camera. And in the position I was in, I had a lot of time to free time, and we used it partly to go out and photograph the Vietnamese countryside. So this is my cover page. It's actually one of my jungle fatigue shirts that I still have, and my patches and my dog tags. I had to erase the social security number from the dog tags for obvious reasons, but anyway. And then I've got a couple of pages of text here and there, kind of just to introduce the different sections, the different areas that I'm covering. This is Fort Knox, where I did my basic training. This is the barracks that I was in. Basic training, a couple of guys from Staples that I got drafted with, and it's me in the middle there. And we became friends with a couple of guys from Michigan, one of whom I still exchange Christmas cards with, and the five of us hung out together. We were there in 1969 when the astronauts landed on the moon, and that happened on the one weekend that we had leave from basic training. So we took a cab into Louisville and rented a hotel room and got some pizzas and some beer and watched the moon landing. So that was quite the deal. You know, that was the era of the draft, and when they drafted you, they didn't really have to pay you much. So here's my basic pay for the month, $92.07. And then they took out taxes. So after taxes, it was $82 monthly pay. So I went to Vietnamese language school in El Paso, Texas, Biggs Field, which is part of Fort Bliss, for 7 months. And we studied the Vietnamese language. Some photos from there, that's me on KP. And this is the language school class. It was a pretty interesting group of guys. And then from Fort Bliss, I went to a place called Fort Holabird in South Baltimore, Maryland, for intelligence school. My pride and joy, my 1966 Plymouth Valiant that I had to leave behind for my little sister to use when I went to Vietnam. Newspaper article from the local paper when I got sent over. Aerial shot of Camp Eagle, which was the main base for the 101st Airborne, where I was stationed. We were up in northern South Vietnam, just outside of Hue, and only probably about 60 miles as the crow flies from the DMZ. So we were pretty far north. These are some photos of the area. This was the first hooch I lived in. I was there only briefly, and they moved us to a little bit better one. That one was pretty ratty. A shower stall that I was part of building, and of course we didn't have indoor plumbing, so we had this beautiful shower stall. And then we no sooner than got it up, and the colonel decided he wanted that area for his parking lots. So it came down, and they rebuilt us another one somewhere else. But of course, helicopters, they were ubiquitous. I mean, that was how the war was fought, by helicopter, and most commonly the Huey, or Slick as it was called. There was an infantry unit, a company across the street, basically across the road from us, and this is a shot when, I don't remember, they were either coming in on stand down or going out on a mission. We always knew when they came in on stand down because they'd get a little rowdy and, you know, have a few beers, and invariably somebody would set off a tear gas grenade. And it would come wafting up to our area eventually. And sometimes it got so bad we even put on gas masks, but you know, you had to give them their fun because they earned it. This is interesting. This is 3 guys from Staples. That's me and Roger Hall and Jack Ringel, guys I'd known Jack since the 5th grade and Roger all through high school, so they were pretty good friends. I spent a few days on a South Vietnamese fire support base shortly after I got there, which was pretty interesting. The base was meticulously kept. As you can see, there wasn't a sandbag out of place. Concertina wire around the edge of the base. The views were pretty spectacular. Here again you can see the Tactical Operations Center and the sandbagging. This is a view we had from where we were staying up there dawn one morning. Vietnam is a beautiful country, has a lot to offer. There was a Mars station a couple doors down from us, and when there was a good radio signal, we could go down there, make a phone call, and then that call would be patched into a ham radio operator in the States, or from the base, whatever, who would in turn relay it to another ham operator who would patch it into a telephone line to our parents. So that was how we could make phone calls. The rainy season in northern South Vietnam started in the fall, and we had to sandbag the roof of our hooch because there was an impending typhoon. The typhoon came, but it was mostly rain and not much wind. But to give you an indication of the amount of rain that actually fell, Phu Bai, which was only about 4 or 5 miles from us, average rainfall for the month of October was 29.2 inches just for the month. So that clay that got baked hard in the summer just got slick as snot in the wet season. I mean, it was just really mucky and slippery. That's the gang at our 1st Brigade interrogation team. The town of Lang Co, a beautiful little beach town on a little sand spit at the north end of the pass. Again, some beautiful country in Vietnam. Unfortunately, there was a war going on at the time. So. We were just a few miles from Hue, so we did spend some time going into Hue and some street scenes, the marketplace in Hue, the bus stop, the bridge. Life goes on even in a war zone, and this was a couple of years after the Tet Offensive had caused so much damage there, so things had returned to a somewhat normal pace. This is the tomb of one of the 19th century emperors, the tomb of Minh Mang. We flew out there one day just to see it, and pretty interesting. Bob Hope came to Camp Eagle with his Christmas show, so we got to see that. This is a North Vietnamese Hoi Chan, a fellow who turned himself in, and that's his interrogation with a South Vietnamese lieutenant that we worked with. There's some of the interpreters that we worked with. These two guys were a lot of fun, really cool. This guy was really smart. He spoke several languages and spoke English well enough to play Scrabble with us, so it was pretty cool. When I was there, I had a niece who was a sophomore in high school down in Farmington, Minnesota. And her dad was one of my dad's younger brothers, and he was an Army veteran. And he probably said, "Nancy, you got a cousin in Vietnam, it'd be nice if you wrote him some letters." So she wrote, and we corresponded back and forth. Well, a few years ago, her mother was coming through town, and she said, "I've got something for you." And she handed me this packet of letters that I had written back to her daughter Nancy back in 1970 and 71. And it was really interesting for me to read them, kind of revealing, because there were things in there I'd written about that I'd just completely forgotten about over the years. Hue was the old imperial capital of Vietnam up through the 19th century pretty much, until the French occupation. And they had in Hue what was called the Citadel, which was kind of the inner city. It was interesting. It had suffered a lot of damage during the Tet Offensive of '68, but there was still a lot to see, so we spent some time there. This was a night we took some rocket attack. We took, what they say there, I think it was about 9 rockets. A couple of them landed within 30 yards of our hooch. That was probably the scariest time I had. So the 122 rockets will definitely get your attention. And then you can see they flattened every tire on every Jeep in the area, and the shrapnel smashed every windshield. And this is my 15 minutes of fame. After I got back, I sold 2 pictures to the Time Life book series, and they went into this book, Collision of Cultures, which I have a copy in the office there. This is one of my favorite photos. It was poker game in our hooch. Every payday there were some guys that would get together and play poker. And I never got involved with it because I was too tight with my money. I was too afraid of losing it. My mother had a saying, scared money never wins. And I think she's probably right, but anyway. But they used these two photos, went into the, so that was part of my 15 minutes of fame.
If you enjoyed this segment of Lakeland Public Television's Common Ground, consider making a contribution at lptv.org. If you have segment ideas pertaining to North Central Minnesota, contact us at legacy@lptv.org. Common Ground is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund by the vote of the people on November 4th, 2008.